City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded July 6, 2021.
Six o'clock.
Winter time when we have.
Everyone, I have 6 o'clock. We will call the Plan Commission meeting to order. Director Konoski, could you call the roll, please?
Weezer.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Haynes.
Here.
Hoppy.
Here.
Rice. Here. 7-0.
7-0. Everyone is in attendance. Just some general housekeeping rules. Restrooms are out and across the hall. If anyone is not fully vaccinated, you should be wearing a mask. We have plenty of room in here to stay distanced. And those people joining us remotely through Zoom, and we have about 12 of those. Please be patient. Keep your phones on mute until you are speaking. And we will call on you. You can raise your virtual hand or somehow indicate that you wish to speak, and we will get that taken care of when the opportunity arises. Right now, we will move on to our agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the report of the June 7th, 2021 meeting and minutes and actions of that Plan Commission. Are there any corrections or changes that any of the commissioners need to bring forward? If not, I would accept a motion to approve those.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
We'll give the second to Arnson.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Raise your hand.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those are approved. Item number 3 is a public hearing with subsequent action on a request from Tom Witt, representing Consolidated Water and Power, for a conditional use permit to construct a control house for an electrical substation at an unaddressed parcel off of Arlington Place, with the parcel identified in your packet, consistent with Chapter 23.02, Sub 1, Sub A, Sub 3, Sub B. And Adam, you want to give us an update on that before I open up the public hearing?
Absolutely, thank you, Mayor. So the request before this commission tonight is to construct an approximate 600 square foot control house for an electrical substation within the subject property. So within the next slide, you can see 2 key points of information. The image on the left-hand screen shows a site view of the property and the surrounding area. So you can see the general access into the property is off of an addressed parcel off of Arlington Place. Now, a little bit halfway through the parcel, there is a automated gate that allows restricted access into the subject property where this control house would be located. And then again, there is a second point of access to the subject property off of Wisconsin Avenue as well. And the image on the right-hand portion of your screen shows a rough concept of what the control house would look like. Staff would recommend approval of this request subject to the conditions outlined within the agenda packet.
Thank you. Before we get started on the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from the commissioners? Okay, seems pretty simple. Right, at this point then I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, step to the lectern, state your name and address, provide that testimony. If you are joining us remotely, somehow indicate that you wish to speak and testify on this public hearing, and I will call on you. Public hearing, go ahead.
Tom Witt, Resources Manager, Consolidated Water Power Company. I submitted the package for staff to review. If there's any questions, we're here to answer between myself and our Operation Manager, Brad Menning. Otherwise, we hope it meets your needs and you can approve it.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing remains open. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed, bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, I would need a motion.
I would move approval with staff recommendations.
Thank you. Is a second by Arnson?
I will second.
Okay, discussion there. Alder Nebo.
I have one quick question. Will there be a lot of noise associated with what's going on, or is this primarily a storage or electronic type?
We'll have the applicant answer that.
Noise will be really no different than what currently exists. You know, we're basically relocating to the new control building out of another building that was now under the ownership of Pixel at the Stevens Point Mill. It's basically electrical type things that we have inside, you know, to muffle the sound with the building, basically.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, the motion is to approve with staff recommended conditions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from the City of Stevens Point to amend the official street map of the City of Stevens Point to extend E.M. Cobb's Drive to the east within the parcel identified in your packet. Director Karnowski.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So before you tonight is a request from the City of Stevens Point to extend E.M. Cobb's Drive further east. As you might recall, we recently did the extension a few months ago, but with the city's acquisition of the Macadlo property and the future expansion of Lineage Logistics, it's appropriate to this is part of the official street map. Finally, this is consistent with the East Park Commerce Center master plan itself. So staff's recommendation is approval as presented.
Thank you very much. Any clarifying questions from the commissioners before we get started? Pete?
Just one out of curiosity I noticed, is the road gonna be east-west or parallel with the property lines? Or does it matter? I'm not sure that they're the same.
The road will be running east-west.
Correct. Yeah, you have a correction line within that area itself, and so you have a small sliver of land that the city will retain ownership of. But if there would be future development south of the proposed roadway, we would combine that with parcels south of there as well.
All right, thanks.
Okay, with that, I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony here, step to the lectern, state your name and address. If you are joining us remotely, indicate that you wish to testify. Public hearing remains open. For the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearings closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Alder Kneebone? Oh.
Sorry.
We'll go with Commissioner Haynes as a motion. Will that be a second then?
Sure.
Seconded by Kneebone. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 5 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from James Lynn, representing Marshfield Clinic, for a conditional use permit to install 2 above-ground storage tanks at 4100 State Highway 66 with the parcel identified in your packet, consistent with Chapter 23.02, Sub 4, Sub E, Sub 3.4. Adam, update?
Thank you, Mayor. So in November 2020, the Common Council approved a conditional use request as part of the Marshfield Clinic expansion. Now, one of the items included in the site plan was a propane tank enclosure and a generator pad in the rear of the expansion. Now, since the conditional use approval in November, the applicant has been working with staff on finalizing the details for this tank enclosure, specifically the size of these tanks, what type of fuel source will be utilized to operate the generators. Now, ultimately, the applicant did conclude with requesting 2 2,200-gallon above-ground petroleum-based storage tanks. Now, this property is located within the city's Wellhead Protection B District, and they do place a cap of 660 gallons for storage capacity of above-ground storage tanks. So that would be the reason for this conditional use request tonight, is to exceed that 660-gallon cap. Now, as you can see in the next slide, so there's 3 points of information to, 3 key facts to point out, rather. The first of which is that there are federal regulations that state that for hospitals, there has to be 24-hour operation. So the purpose of these generators and these tanks are to allow for continuous 24-hour operation in the event, power goes out, torrential downpour like we're experiencing right now. The second key fact is the fuel source itself. Now, the applicant did review rather using natural gas as a type of fuel source instead of petroleum. Now, there were issues with having a natural gas source in terms of the lag time that would occur from when you would be starting up a generator, if natural gas would be the fuel source versus petroleum. If natural gas was a fuel source, there'd be roughly about a 15-second lag time. Petroleum, there'd be about a 1 second, if that, lag time. Then, as mentioned in the agenda packet, this generator and above-ground tanks would service both the current clinic plus the expansion. So as such, staff would recommend approval subject to the 16 conditions shown in the packet, and we would be happy to take any of your questions.
One additional thing, Mr. Mayor. So we did have
Yes.
the city's water department review the proposed above-ground storage tanks. Many of the conditions that are outlined were recommended by the utilities department. So they have reviewed this pretty extensively and are comfortable, provided that it's constructed consistent with the conditions that we have.
And it's my understanding, too, that the fire department was involved with the conditions as well. I confirmed that with Assistant Chief Gemza and Fire Marshal Egan this afternoon. Any clarifying questions before we open up the public hearing? Commissioner Arnson?
The generators, they're emergency generators, so it's
Yep.
just to serve the generators, or is it an alternate fuel to serve the generators when the power kicks off?
It would be to service the generators.
All right. And 2,200 gallons per day to keep it going, so the two tanks would keep it going for 2 days, or allow one to drain and fill up and the other one go, is the idea?
Correct.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, then I will declare the public hearing open.
Actually, I
Step
have a
forward to
question.
the lectern. Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Commissioner Haynes.
To the northwest is water, it looks like. I'm just wondering topographically which way things flow. South.
Are you-
South. Yeah, the
Down.
flow is
Yes.
south, yeah.
So you're
Okay.
you're referring to the stormwater
So it
retention area?
yeah, straight down into the groundwater. So if there was a leak, it would flow towards the parking lot? Is that what you're
Towards the parking
saying?
lot on the highway, correct.
Okay, other than, and soak into the soil, but, okay. And then I think in here, there's something about, multiple ways of capturing the petroleum if there is a leak.
Yes.
So not only the pipes are doubled, but there's sumps and,
Double retainage walls,
Basin
sumps
and-
with
okay.
constant monitoring.
Yeah, it's just that, it goes, beyond 660 by multiple thousands of gallons. It's kind of worrisome. Okay,
Okay, let's go to the public hearing first, and then I'll make a comment on your thoughts, Commissioner Haynes. Public hearing is open.
Yeah, I just had a couple clarifying questions about the decision on the fuel source. I understand from the packet that the petroleum was seen as more efficient or more immediately effective. I was just wondering, I wanted to clarify, so each tank, 2,200 tank, offers a single 24-hour cycle?
Okay.
So,
We'll have the applicant answer the questions if staff can't after the
Okay.
public hearing.
okay. So that was my question. If it is, a single 24-hour period or a total of 48, is it fairly easy to fill those fuel tanks with 2,200 gallons of gas if there's a 3-day outage or a 4-day outage? Given that those tanks supply only a finite, amount of fuel, is there a trade-off benefit to having natural gas if it's a continuous source of power or supply versus, maybe it's a little slow on the get-go, but it lasts for days on end? I believe the groundwaters run on backup natural gas. I'm guessing maybe they don't need quite the same amount of power to run their generators as the hospital does. So yeah, those were my 3 questions about the length of time, the ability to refuel, and the trade-offs on using natural gas for continuous supply.
Okay, we'll get
Thanks.
those questions answered for you. Yes, Mike, I'll give you a call, or I'll call on you after the public hearing is closed. Just write down the questions. Public hearing remains open.
Good evening, everyone. Melissa Johnson, District 5 Alder. I just want to kind of provide what my experience was with large fuel tanks used for backup generators. I worked at Point Beach Nuclear Plant, which is right on Lake Michigan in sandy soils. And we had large amounts of diesel because our backup generators were diesel engines. And, you know, all of the tanks have interstitial monitors. So even the beginning of a leak is noted with the interstitial monitors. I'm assuming that these would have something similar. And even though it's a large amount of fuel, again, I haven't personally had experience, but I've seen them in action at a nuclear plant at which I worked. I can tell you from my experience working with the people who monitored those, it's pretty robust. So I feel very confident that the same will happen here. So thank you.
Thank you, President Johnson. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to unmute yourself and answer Alderperson Keemer's questions, please.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Mike DiAugustino with Dunham Associates. We're a part of the entity design firm that was working with Marshfield Clinic to design this specific hospital addition. To specifically answer the questions on fuel source runtime, what we do is we have two parallel generators, and the idea is that if one generator for some reason doesn't work, you have the other one is kind of your redundant source. So at the end of the day, we're looking that each generator can run the building for 24 hours if there's a failure on either side. With that being said, the size of generator is what's driving the amount of fuel that's used. So we totaled up all the equipment that's used in the hospital to gain a load value, basically just how much power is used to support the building, right? And then we multiply that by, the fuel that's used by that generator. So in this case, it's 73 gallons per hour is what's used. So we multiply that by 24, and that gives us about 1,700 gallons. So we have a little bit extra fuel because you don't end up fueling the tanks 100% of the way. You keep a little bit of a buffer there. So that's how you make sure you get your 24 hours of runtime. As far as, I want to make sure that I'm hitting all the questions. There was another question about the style fuel. So when you have a hospital, a lot of the concern is making sure that you have the generators start in a very fast fashion because you have, operating rooms and other sort of life safety critical applications that we have to make sure that we're covering. So the idea is that other fuel sources don't have the robust ability to start as fast as diesel. And with hospital applications, what we see is that, I'll put it at like 95% to like 99% of the time we're using diesel generators rather than, natural gas or propane because there's sometimes issues with potentially starting within the value of time that we have to, make sure our life safety applications are up and running. So hopefully that covers all the questions, and, if I didn't cover anything, please let me know.
Thank you. Alderperson Keemer, did I cover it?
Yeah, I mean, I
Oh.
have no experience.
We got to get you up at the microphone, otherwise they can't hear you very well.
Thank you very much for clarifying. I guess the additional thing is, I mean, if there was a long power outage where, electricity was out for several days, is it fairly easy to get 2,200 gallons of petroleum to the hospital, every 24 hours? I don't know if that's something that's very easily done or if that would be a stretch, or just curious. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike, would you care to answer that?
Yes, sir. So traditionally what a hospital will have will be an emergency fueling plant in place to get those additional fuel sources there. So the idea is that you run and you call your fuel source and you can get a tanker truck in there. Obviously we are in Wisconsin. There's winter weather conditions. Usually the 24 hours is enough to get that fuel source there. And if that isn't necessarily going to be the case, plans are made to, potentially move critical patients out of the building at that point. So that would be a part of the hospital's life safety plans.
Thank you very much. Okay, commissioners, what are your wishes?
I would move approval with the 16 staff recommendations, which I would agree is robust.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Cooper. Commissioner Haynes, what I was going to do, President Johnson kind of touched on, we actually have some of these things in the city already. There's gas stations in Alderperson Kneebone's district with very similar safety measures in place. Alderperson Kneebone.
Actually, that leads me to a comment. I don't have a problem with this. I think the safeguards, there's enough safeguards in place, but it does tend to lead us to a larger discussion as we go forward with changing zoning regulations, conditional uses, and how to preserve critical habitats in the city. So some days we won't have to consider whether or not to put a fuel tank in a wellhead protection area or some other area that might be important to nature or something like that. So I think we make sure we have the safeguards, but perhaps down the line, we don't want to put things like this in those areas. Anyway,
Understood.
another discussion for another night.
Thank you. Okay, the motion before you is to approve the request with staff recommendations. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. Our last public hearing is item number 6. That's a public hearing and a request from Sheldon Opperman for a conditional use permit to construct a medical clinic at an unaddressed parcel off Business Park Drive with the parcel identified in your packet, consistent with Chapter 23.02, Sub 3, Sub A, Sub 3, Sub A. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. Now, the request before this commission tonight is to construct an approximate 14,700 square foot medical clinic on a partially developed lot off of Business Park Drive. Now, this structure will include pre-post operation rooms, exam rooms, procedure rooms that will have ambulance service provided, and then associated office space. There is a floor plan that's included in the agenda packet too that further outlines this. Now, medical clinics would be considered a conditional use in the M1 Light Industrial District, and the applicant has been working with both city staff and the Portage County Planning and Zoning Department to make sure that applicable deed restrictions and covenants are in place and met with this request. A second component of this request too relates to parking. Now, there are, based on the size of the structure, 49 parking stalls are required, and with this request, 129 are proposed, which would exceed that 150% cap that's allowed via our zoning code. Now, the applicant is planning for future development on the property, so the excess parking would help accommodate any planned future development. So the part of this conditional use request is to temporarily allow for that greater than 150% parking on the lot for the event that there would be potential future development down the road in this parcel. So as the mayor has in the shown on the slide here, does show a rough mock-up of what the property will look like with the site, with the proposed building and then the expanded parking areas, plus some renderings of the proposed development. As such, staff would recommend approval of the request subject to the conditions, and staff and the applicant is on the call to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions before we open up the public hearing?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Haynes.
Well, maybe they're not clarifying questions, so never mind.
Give it a shot. We'll check.
Okay. If the building was going to get larger, which way would it go? Into these orange areas, or what would be discussed?
I think that's appropriate for now.
Okay. And then why do they need all the parking right now? Why can't they wait until they build the next addition to build the parking?
Okay. Holly, would you be willing to or able to answer that at this point?
This one is not my agenda item. I was with Mike D'Agostino in the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had it written down wrong. My fault. Adam, do we have anyone that can speak to this?
Do, I believe, the applicant Sheldon Opperman, he said he was gonna be on the call, otherwise Melissa Cluck is on Zoom and she can answer the questions too.
I am,
Sheldon's on.
this is Sheldon, the applicant. I'm also happy to say that my client sent out their release today, so I can say their name, GI Associates. And the answer to the question, great one it is that there's a bunch of parking already existing on the site. Only half of it is shown on that image in blue. So it's really more like double that area as it stands today. Not something we decided to build, just happened to be a feature of the site. Once the current proposed building is laid out and the parking configured the way it would need to be, just happens to be there's this extra parking that the business park had built previous, and to the right of that, I forget exactly the direction, I think that's technically to the east, is a big parcel of additional land, could accommodate a whole other building that would ultimately use that parking if and when that building is built. So the request here is to not have to demolish and essentially plant grass over parking spaces that arguably are going to need to be rebuilt in the future when something happens on that other half of the parcel. And we wouldn't be requesting to build the excess parking, it just happens to be there already.
Okay, thank you very much.
So who built the parking originally? I'm just curious, like, why is it sitting there?
Portage County originally built the parking lot with the intention that you could have two developments along in those two corners of that specific parcel. This parcel's been really difficult for the county to sell because of the existing parking, that you're essentially regulating where the buildings can go and where they can't go.
Right.
And so was pretty happy to see a group come through and propose to buy it and get rid of some of the parking, but not all of it.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
Okay, now I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, step to the lectern or indicate that you would like to provide that testimony if you're joining us remotely. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I would move approval of the request, subject to the staff recommended conditions.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Haynes. Discussion. With Commissioner Arnson.
So just to clarify, the excess parking is requested because the existing parking doesn't fit with the proposed new building and they need
Yes.
parking for the new building.
Yes.
All right.
Also, the
Yeah, it
existing
looks like
parking lot
brings
is.
it up to the building,
Yeah.
at least on
Right.
that one side, and then probably employee parking on the other side or whatever. Or either one, I mean.
Exactly.
whatever.
The existing parking lot is probably 20, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's not in great shape anyway.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 7 is a request from Chris Lowry for a site plan review to construct a pet bathing facility at 5590 Highway 10 East, consistent with Chapter 23.02, Sub 2, Sub E, Sub 5. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. Now, this request entails installing a pet wash structure within the existing Fleet Farm parking lot situated on the northeast corner of the parcel. The applicant is available in person here that can discuss a little bit more about what this pet wash facility entails, but effectively, the structure does include a vacuum, does include a wash area, so pet owners can wash, groom their animals. There is a treat vending machine located inside too, in case any of their pets have or want to snack along the way. But the reason for the site plan review is that our zoning code states that for any new building or new use that's requested in a lot that's zoned B5, it's required to go through the site plan review. Staff has extensively looked at this request subject to the 3 core pillars of the site plan review: access into the lot, internal traffic circulation, and then compliance with other applicable city ordinances. Staff does feel that this request meets those 3 standards and would recommend approval subject to the conditions enclosed in the agenda packet.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Adam? Or the applicant?
Clarify, 100 square feet's big enough for this operation?
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
walk
So,
into it.
I wish this was around a while ago. We had to remodel a bathroom and a basement for our dog. And it's 3 feet by 4 feet, and that works just fine.
Trying to get my
But-
dog into the bathtub.
Yeah,
This would be a
Max
lot
knows
easier.
if he's out in the mud, he runs right downstairs into the pet shower
Right.
to hose off. So I've seen these things in other locations, and I thought it was a really cool idea.
Yeah, no, I like the idea. Seems pretty efficient. It's good.
So one, an owner and a dog can go into it one at a time, okay.
Or just the owner.
Or
Really,
just the
if you're really
owner.
dirty.
Maybe.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I have a cat who does not like to be bathed
Okay.
whatsoever. I wondered how it's secured. Do you pay to get into it, or can you just walk in and then you?
We'll
Not
have-
that anybody's gonna wanna break in, but I just wondered how.
Sure, these units, we come with the option of, it's 144 square feet total footprint. So you have, some of that is a mechanical room like Adam described. It has, heating and air conditioning in it, a hot water heater. So it's essentially, it's operational 24/7. So it does have, ADA, ETL certified locks on it, push and pulls, no locked unless it's locked by us, the vendors or owner, or staff that would watch it at Fleet Farm. So it would technically be open unless cold weather. We do have staff close it, inclement weather, and everything else like that. But cats, we sell them all over the country, and someone in Arkansas actually sent us a picture of a pygmy goat in there, but no cats as of yet. So, and actually, I have, if you guys all haven't received frequently asked questions, if you're interested what they are and what they do, but I believe, Mayor, you've seen one?
Yep.
So it takes kind of the uniqueness out of it, because when we started these projects, everyone, working with Adam's been, everyone in the city's been really great help. And it's just the uniqueness of the product. Everyone's like, a dog wash, what do we do? Do we just come in and hit a button? No, you actually have to physically go in there. Physically go in there
We
and.
have touchless and soft touch. You want the
No, but
martinizing, we can do that.
We do offer 6 different treatments, so oatmeal and everything. So it's been a real good fit. We currently own and operate 6 units in the Eau Claire, Chippewa area, and they've been welcomed. And we're looking to partner with Fleet Farm to continue to Green Bay, Economowoc, and all that. And so getting approval here and moving forward be a great step for us to take the inquisitive other cities, and now they're just starting to go online now that we have this meeting. So I want to thank you all for your time, and if there's any other questions I can answer when I'm up here.
Thank you. Does anybody in the room have questions? President Johnson, you want to come up and?
Cool idea. Admittedly, I wish I would have thought of it. But one question, I have a friend who runs a dog daycare, and occasionally it gets shut down because of dog viruses. Do you have any control for that if you get a report of a user who may have a dog that's come down with a parvo or something else that could be contagious to other pets?
Sure. Good question, and thank you. We actually do have measures in place which instill most of our members or people that go there, we encourage membership. They are registered through our social media and our website. So we do encourage all vaccinations, even though it's not public record. We can request those at any time. So, and it's kind of like an honor system, like we said tonight with the masks. We're not going to be aware. The units are disinfected twice a day with sanitizer, hospital grade, so in the morning and afternoon, and even during the day with local staff around the area. So hopefully that addressed your concerns. You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? including online? Okay, think we're good. Commissioners? Commissioner Nebo?
I would move to approve the site plan review to construct a pet bathing facility at 5590 Highway 10 East, subject to staff recommendations. And I think if you go into Fleet Farm and get some popcorn, depending on the dog and the owner, it could be a pretty good show.
Yes, indeed. Is there a second? Seconded by Arnson. Further comments or discussion?
I guess I just have one, maybe additional question. Related to security, is there additional security on the unit itself, video surveillance, or do you rely on Fleet Farm or to kind of provide it?
Mr. Lowry, I'm going to have you come up to the lectern and address that question.
Thank you for your question, and actually, yes, we do have live security feeds in there for one. We hate to say for protection, but mostly if someone had an issue with the wash not working or anything. But it is dual purpose. We do have live feeds, and actually, we have the letter of intent and approval from Fleet Farm, so we would be able to review their security footage as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Puppy cam. The wash cam. That'd be really funny if your cat was in there. Imagine giving a cat a bath would be noteworthy to watch. All right, we have a motion to approve. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 8 is a request from the City of Stevens Point again to grant a gas easement and electric underground and overhead easement for the Wisconsin Public Service Corporation within Municipal Lot 7 with the parcel identified in your packet. Director Kronoski?
So fairly straightforward. The city was donated 2 Tesla charging stations from, I believe, the Tesla owners of Wisconsin from hosting their event in the city last summer. And so Public Works and Community Development staff have been trying to identify areas that makes the most sense to install these. And so identify Municipal Lot 7 made the most sense, mainly because of the existing power utilities that are along the north property line. So as part of that, we do have to provide them an easement so they can run the utilities to the pedestals that'll have the 2 charging stations on. So that's pretty much what's before you tonight is granting them that easement to install those utilities there. So staff would recommend approval as presented.
Okay. Any comments from the audience? Comments from the commissioners? What a motion.
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by
I'll second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Next item on the agenda is our February through June monthly reports. Director Kronoski?
So we do apologize. We've been going through a transition with our permitting software. It's taken a bit longer to get pretty much all the monthly reports together to be formatted correctly. And Maria Moore and Lauren Delaney in the Community Development Office have been doing an excellent job of physically inputting every permit that comes in while we were working through a number of the issues that we had with the permitting software. So as a result of finally getting that program up and running the way it should be, we were able to get more accurate monthly reports. So fairly straightforward. We're staying fairly consistent with a typical year through June of 2020. We haven't had permits pulled for major projects yet. However, given the amount of pending development, like the clinic as an example, I do expect the year-to-date valuation to go up in the coming months. So nothing out of the ordinary. Would recommend approval as presented.
And it was nice to point out too that I see here you got a footnote where we had 252 participants in No Mow May, and I think it was pretty successful. So that's kudos to everybody involved there. Any questions from the commissioners? Go ahead.
I have a really bizarre question. Someone asked the other day, why is it called pulling a permit and not issuing a permit? Is there some, just to,
I think Google would be able to answer that one.
Totally throw you people off. Does it,
I have no idea.
just a curiosity.
I could make something up, like, it's,
I tried to, but they didn't believe me, so.
No, that's a good one to look up, because
Just,
I like those
yeah,
word
just
origin things, or
kinda
phrase origins.
Curious about that.
My
I mean,
favorite
maybe
is-
there was some time you had to literally pull it out of some. Sounds like a job for an
Probably
associate planner.
pulling a permit out of the stack that's sitting there for an application. Maybe that's how it was, but we'll look that up and report back. I was trying to figure out the origin of how come recently. Like, how come it's called pulling a permit? How come? What does that mean? All right, we do not need any action on that. Next up is the director's report. I will turn it over to the director for the report.
So the monthly report is included in your agenda packet.
Page 130.
Starting on 130, correct. Fairly straightforward, probably the only thing of note. So after this body had recommended approval of the accessory dwelling unit to council, the council opted to table that, kicked it back to staff to work with the alders on some neighborhood meetings. We have 4 neighborhood meetings scheduled in the coming weeks, so that's really exciting to see. It'll be nice to get out into the public and get some additional feedback on accessory dwelling units. So other than that, things are going fairly swimmingly right now in community development. So considering it's one of our busiest parts of the year, so.
Okay. And with that, our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 6:41. Thank you.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.